Have you ever wondered why, just as you feel a sense of purpose awakening inside you, those closest to you suddenly become your harshest critics? You might feel like an outcast in your own home, mocked, misunderstood, and dismissed by the very people who are supposed to stand by your side. It seems unfair, and yet it keeps happening to individuals who sense they've been chosen for something bigger in life. Some say it's a spiritual test. Others believe it's simply how human nature reacts to extraordinary ambition. But whatever the cause, you're about to discover that none of this is by accident. There's a deeper design at work here, one that could be revealing your highest calling. Take a moment to look back at the great stories you've heard, whether from scripture, myth, or real-life accounts about people who rose to a special calling. A common thread appears. Their families rarely believed in them at first. This pattern might be subtle in some cases, or it might be painfully obvious, especially if you felt the sting of your loved one's disbelief. When you're singled out for a unique journey, the people around you sometimes feel threatened, jealous, or simply confused. Family is meant to be a safe space, yet for many individuals stepping into a new level of spiritual awareness, it suddenly feels like enemy territory. Criticism cuts deeper, coming from a parent or sibling. Dismissive laughter from someone you love can hurt more than any stranger's insult. If you've ever felt that silent devastation in your chest after a cruel remark, know you're not alone. This exact heartbreak has shaped countless chosen ones across centuries. But that's not the whole story. Rather than viewing family conflict as a dead end, it might actually be a doorway. Imagine a hidden test placed before you. The question is, will you sink into bitterness or rise into unshakable faith? Some spiritual teachers say these trials are inevitable for those who step onto a path of purpose. They claim it's part of your transformation, a cleansing of doubt, before you emerge refined and stronger than ever. And that pattern is about to get even more intriguing once we dip into ancient beliefs and modern theories. Throughout history, legends have whispered about those destined for greatness, whether they were prophets, warriors, visionaries, or keepers of divine secrets. Often, these individuals faced immediate backlash from their tribes or families. Ancient mythologies from around the world contain themes of exiling the destined child or ridiculing the future hero. Why? Some believed that negative forces try to extinguish a bright flame before it can light the path for others. In modern times, this idea hasn't gone away. Instead, it's evolved into countless rumors and controversies. You might have heard chatter online about an unseen war against people with a special role in raising consciousness. While some scoff at these claims, brushing them off as conspiracy or fantasy, others stand firm, sharing story after story of how life turned upside down the moment they realized they had a calling. It gets even more interesting when you consider how global connectivity fuels these narratives. Social media platforms let people from all walks of life discuss spiritual awakenings in real time. If you scroll through certain forums, you'll see the same pattern repeated. As soon as I told my family about my dream to help others, they called me delusional. Or, ever since I decided to pursue a spiritual mission, my relatives have done nothing but laugh. For skeptics, it's a coincidence. For believers, it's a sign that any surge in personal growth is met with an equally strong pushback from the status quo. And this friction often manifests most painfully in the family setting. But once again, the reason behind it might not be as straightforward as it seems. We've laid the foundation with ancient myths and contemporary accounts. Now let's get to the core of what stirs up this painful conflict within your home. When your own mother or father shakes their head at your ambitions, or your siblings belittle your newfound sense of purpose, it's easy to assume the worst. Maybe they just don't love me enough. But often, the reality lies in misunderstood intentions, unspoken fears, and personal insecurities. Parents, for instance, might react harshly because they're frightened. A child who walks an unfamiliar path threatens everything they hold dear: traditions, comfort zones, expectations. Meanwhile, siblings can experience jealousy or confusion, especially if your growth feels like a spotlight on their own stagnation. On a psychological level, families thrive on equilibrium. Everyone knows their role, and as long as you play your part, the system remains stable. But when one member steps out of that role, say, you decide you're no longer going to live a life dictated by others' opinions, it disrupts the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the family system fights to pull you back into your old place, even if it means belittling your dreams or questioning your sanity. Of course, toxicity is real. Some families go beyond innocent worry or awkward adjustments. They become malicious in their words or actions. They might tear you down for personal satisfaction or out of a deeply ingrained belief that you'll never rise beyond them. This is where bitterness can breed, if you let it. But consider this: every conflict can become a catalyst for growth, teaching you lessons about compassion and inner fortitude. The big question is how to respond when the people closest to you try to clip your wings, especially when you believe you were never meant to be caged in the first place. And what happened next would shock everyone who has resigned themselves to despair. You see, conflict isn't just conflict, it can be fuel for transformation. In the next section, we'll talk about how to transmute this pain into a source of power. The first time you realize that a loving family member doesn't support your vision can feel like a betrayal. It's as if the ground beneath your feet trembles, making you doubt everything. But here's the twist: that moment of hurt can also light a fire inside you. Pain is energy, and energy can be transformed. Instead of letting it devour you, you can harness it to propel you further than you ever imagined. Think about how diamonds are formed. Intense pressure transforms plain carbon into something precious. In the same way, adversity can refine your spirit. When your family mocks you or tries to diminish your worth, you have a choice. You could retaliate with anger or drown in despair, but neither will bring you the peace you crave. Instead, responding with love, or at least the commitment to find love beyond your initial anger, can become your superpower. Why love? Because love disarms. It drains negative energy out of a situation. It leaves antagonists confused. They expected a fight, but got understanding instead. Love doesn't mean allowing people to walk all over you. It means standing firm in your self-worth and responding with dignity. It's saying, I still see the best in you, but I also see the best in me, and I won't let hatred destroy either of us. Choosing love in the face of hurt might seem like an impossible feat, especially if the wounds are fresh. But it's a skill that grows with practice. And once you make this choice consistently, a fascinating ripple effect begins. You transform from victim to victor. Your family may not change overnight, but their comments lose their power. And in some cases, they'll start to see that your life really is guided by a higher calling, one that can't be dimmed by anyone's negativity. But that's only part of the puzzle. If you're wondering whether this conflict is truly universal, you're not alone. Let's explore some recent controversies and real-life examples that reveal how widespread and at times shocking this family pushback can get. Social media has become a virtual confession booth for countless people who sense they're on an extraordinary path. Scroll through certain video platforms or specialized forums, and you'll discover dramatic testimonies. One person shares how they grew up in a deeply traditional household, only to realize in adulthood that they felt called to a more unconventional spiritual path. The backlash from their parents was so intense that they nearly gave up everything. But once they stuck to their convictions and showed patience instead of anger, the family slowly opened up to learning more, though it took years. Another story tells of an individual who found themselves on the receiving end of harsh words from cousins and siblings whenever they talked about having special dreams or visions at night. At first, they responded with resentment. Over time, they adopted a calmer approach, and that shift apparently changed the entire family dynamic. Now the same cousins who once mocked them come seeking advice whenever they face major life decisions. What's shocking is how frequent these stories are. Some people, especially in more religious or culturally conservative families, face accusations that they're losing their minds or dabbling in dangerous territory. In other households, it's the opposite scenario, a purely secular family labeling anyone with spiritual beliefs as naive. Either way, rumors swirl, judgments fly, and tensions burn. People who share these stories online often mention they felt tested at the deepest level, like the universe or God was watching to see if they'd give in to hatred or cling to love. Controversies also arise regarding whether these chosen one experiences are real, imagined, or the product of groupthink. Skeptics argue it's a psychological phenomenon. Believers claim it's a genuine spiritual movement. Regardless of where the truth lies, one fact remains undeniable. Family pushback is a near universal challenge that can either shape you into a person of compassion and resolve or break your spirit, depending on how you handle it. And if you're still here, you clearly want to break the cycle of conflict in a healthy way. That's where compassion, possibly the hardest virtue to maintain in the face of ridicule, comes into play. When your loved ones hurl insults or roll their eyes at your newfound perspective on life, it's natural to feel frustration build in your chest. After all, how do you love those who seem determined to misunderstand you? The answer lies in recognizing a universal truth. Hurt people often hurt others. Sometimes the negativity from your family is a reflection of their internal battles, a fear that you'll leave them behind, a jealousy that they haven't discovered their own path, or an anxiety about changes they can't control. Seeing your family members as royalty in God's eyes might feel like a stretch when they're being unkind, but try this mental shift. Instead of viewing them purely as aggressors, imagine them as unknowing participants in a grand design. If you're truly called to a higher purpose, perhaps part of that purpose is learning to love in the face of hate. It's not about excusing their bad behavior. It's about refusing to let bitterness infest your own heart. Compassion can sound soft, but don't underestimate its strength. Compassion doesn't mean letting people trample your boundaries. It means acknowledging their pain without allowing it to direct your own actions. Practically speaking, you can hold on to your convictions while actively listening to the concerns of your family. You can show respect without endorsing their negativity, and you can decide that no matter how they behave, you won't resort to cheap shots or name-calling. This approach not only protects your spirit, but also lays the groundwork for genuine transformation within the family. Over time, a remarkable thing can happen. People realize their hurtful tactics no longer gain a reaction. They start to see your unwavering kindness, which becomes a mirror reflecting their own actions. Sometimes, it's that very reflection that leads them to change. Other times, it might take a while, or may never happen fully, but you'll be standing strong in who you are, free from the poison of anger or resentment. But that isn't the end of your journey. There's another piece many people overlook: timing, specifically divine timing. It's the notion that you can do all the right things, show all the love in the world, and still see little immediate progress until the moment is exactly right. If you feel frustrated and impatient about when your family will finally wake up to your value, you're not alone. Waiting for respect or acceptance can feel like an endless uphill climb. Yet countless spiritual traditions underscore the importance of timing, what some call God's timing. No matter how hard you push, sometimes hearts aren't ready to shift until a precise moment arrives. Have you ever noticed how nature operates in cycles? Trees bloom in spring, fruit ripens in summer, leaves fall in autumn, and the world rests in winter. Trying to force an apple to ripen in winter is as futile as demanding your family see your worth before they're capable of understanding it. This isn't about letting people off the hook for bad behavior. It's about recognizing that true transformation occurs when deeper readiness aligns with outward opportunity. During your waiting season, your primary task is to continue nurturing your own spiritual growth. Keep choosing love over bitterness. Keep setting healthy boundaries, and keep praying, meditating, or practicing whatever it is that connects you to the divine. You may notice subtle shifts in your family, a calmer tone in conversation, a curiosity about why you're not reacting like before, or even a genuine apology. Or you might see nothing at all for a long stretch. But trust that if your path is indeed guided by a higher power, nothing is random. Every challenge, every ounce of mockery, and every act of love you offer in return is part of a larger story weaving itself into completion. Then, in a moment you might least expect, you'll see a crack in the walls of negativity. It might come through a crisis where you're the one who steps up to help. It could appear in a surprising request for advice or a quiet confession of regret. The shape doesn't matter as much as the significance. This is your family's awakening to your reality. And when that day comes, it'll be clear that no one but a loving, patient soul could have accomplished such a transformation. With all this in mind, how do you move forward when the daily grind of disrespect still weighs you down? Let's pull everything together in one final reflection that will hopefully leave you inspired and challenged in the best way possible. It might seem unfair that the most critical people in your life are those who share your home, your bloodline, or your childhood memories. But consider this possibility. Your family is actually part of your training ground. If you can learn to love, forgive, and remain steadfast among those who hurt you the most, you'll have cultivated a spiritual strength that can withstand almost anything. Remember the core truths we've explored. Family conflict often reveals deeper tests about your calling and character. History and modern times alike show a repeating pattern of chosen ones facing skepticism from those who should support them. Responding with love is not weakness. It's a powerful stance that disarms negativity. Compassion, patience, and boundaries work together to protect your peace and pave the way for genuine change. Divine timing means that sometimes your efforts won't bear fruit immediately, but that doesn't mean they're in vain. Ask yourself this question as you step away from this video or transcript. Am I willing to keep showing love, even when it's not returned, and trust that a greater plan is unfolding behind the scenes? If your answer is yes, then you're already walking the path of a true chosen one, someone who refuses to let hatred snuff out their capacity to shine. By holding on to compassion and unwavering faith in the midst of family discord, you're not just changing your home environment, you're laying the groundwork for your highest destiny. Whether it takes months or years for your loved ones to see who you really are, your journey will not be wasted. In fact, every painful moment can become a stepping stone to a deeper, richer understanding of purpose. So embrace the test, stand firm in love, and know that sometimes the harshest trials are reserved for those meant to carry the greatest light.